There are three Islanders who have been mentioned as possible buyout candidates. We'll talk about the possibilities and how it would affect the team going forward. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the New York Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. And we've got a lot to discuss on today's show. We're going to talk about potential buyout candidates and how that'll impact the team. We're going to talk about 2 Islanders who are definitely headed to the World Championships and the candidates for the most improved player on the Islanders this year. All that and more coming up. Let's start with the buyout candidates because there's been a lot of discussion on social media and articles written about this. And there have been 3 players who have been discussed as potential buyout candidates. And some of them I think are more realistic than others, but I'm going to break all 3 of them down and discuss the pros and cons of buying out any of these players. The first and the least likely, I think, to be bought out of the 3 is Anthony Duclair. And the reason is this. Still got 3 years left on his deal. The key with Duclair is the way the season ended. He and Patrick Roy obviously had some kind of falling out. Roy was critical of Duclair publicly and rather directly after a late season game, and Duclair ended up taking a leave of absence. Now, nobody is going to say that Anthony Duclair had a good year last year with the Islanders. I think Anthony Duclair would be the first to say it was a disappointing performance. He scored 7 goals and had 11 points in 44 games, which puts him on pace for about 21 points over the entire season if he had played all 82 games. Now, for a guy who was brought in to play on the first line when he was first signed, that is not even close to an acceptable performance. He was a -15 plus minus in the 44 games. And look, obviously, the groin injury he suffered after 5 games this year definitely adversely impacted his play. Anthony Duclair, a lot of his game is based on speed and burst and beating players to loose pucks, out skating them to get time and space and create scoring chances. And when your groin is hurt, it is hard to skate, period, let alone skate at full speed and change directions and all of that. And I'm not using it as an excuse, but it is an explanation. And there's so many unanswered questions about Anthony Duclair's return. The first is, will Patrick Roy be back as Islanders coach? We know Roy and Duclair go back to Duclair's days in juniors where Roy coached him. And that was one of the reasons Duclair said he signed with the Islanders in the first place. I would tend to think that if Roy is not back, Duclair has no reason to worry about repairing that relationship or having a problem with the new coach, he'll get a clean slate. If Waugh is back, that's where a potential buyout may come up if, and I have no evidence that this is the case, but if Patrick Waugh and Anthony Duclair just cannot bury the hatchet. They're just not on the same page. And Duclair says, you know what? I don't want to play for you anymore. After being on so many teams over the course of his career, I really don't think that would work to Duclair's advantage. I think the odds of Anthony Duclair being bought out are fairly low. Not impossible, but fairly low. The next candidate, the middle candidate in my mind, is Scott Mayfield. And, Mayfield is an interesting candidate. He has 5 years left on his contract. And, it will cost the Islanders about, $1.25 million to $1.5 million a year for the next 10 years. If they buy him out, it will save them a little bit of cap space. But here's the thing about Mayfield. He played 66 games. He had 3 goals, 9 points. He was a plus 18 this year. Keep in mind that no other Islanders player had better than plus 10. And that was Matthew Barzal, who only played 30 games. But Mayfield was injured part of the time and was a healthy scratch for several games until more injuries hit the defensive core. He doesn't fit, realistically, the type of game that Patrick Waugh prefers to play. So if Waugh is back, I think the chances of Mayfield not being back are better. And the reason you would buy him out is because not too many teams are going to be willing to take 5 more years of Scott Mayfield, who is already on the wrong side of 30. His body may be breaking down a bit due to injuries. He plays a physical style. The reason you wouldn't want to buy out Scott Mayfield is, number one, he's a right shot defenseman. Those are rare. Number two, he does play a physical style, and the Islanders don't have enough players on their roster to play that physical style, or who do play a physical style these days. The identity line used to set the tone by being physical. There are not enough guys left on this roster who fit that description, and every team needs, a defenseman with some size and physicality. So if Waugh is back and you're going to implement his system, maybe you do look to buy out Mayfield. The alternative that might be better is if you retain a little bit of salary, because the salary of Scott Mayfield is really not the issue. It's the term. It's the 5 years rather than the, $3.5 million or $3.25 million that he's making this year. And, every year that's the cap hit. That's not excessive for a solid third pair right shot defenseman, but it's $3.5 million, but he's not a UFA until 5 years down the road. So if you retain a little bit of salary, you probably could get a team interested in taking him in a trade. And that's obviously cleaner and better than buying him out. So those are the options there. I would say the odds are a little less than 50-50 that Mayfield gets bought out. And then you have Pierre Engvall. And I think he's the most likely candidate to be bought out. Like Mayfield, Engvall has 5 years left on a contract that at the time boggled a lot of observers' minds and fans' minds and continues to boggle. Engvall is 28. He is earning $3 million a year, again, for the next 5 years. Now, the $3 million is a little more than what you're getting back these days from Pierre Engvall. Engvall played 62 games this year, had 8 goals, 15 points, a -7 plus minus. And in 62 games, he had a grand total of 47 hits, which is actually more than what he's had in the recent past. But if Patrick Roy is back, I think Roy really didn't have a lot of usage for Engvall. He really didn't want him, and it was like seemingly Lou Lamoriello wanted Engvall on the team. Patrick Roy kind of didn't. Kept telling Engvall, hey, you got to play the way I'm asking you to play. Go to the net. Don't stay on the perimeter. Use your speed. Use your reach. And when Engvall did that for about a 7 or 8 game, maybe a 10-game stretch, the results were much better. But it just, he has often gotten hot and shown flashes, but he doesn't seem to consistently play the way Patrick Roy and a lot of his coaches want him to play. Plus which, paying a 4th line or 3rd line at best winger $3 million a year, it's a little excessive. Now, again, here's a guy who is not a kid. He's not 22 or 25. He's 28. He is what he is. He is not all of a sudden going to turn into a 30-goal scorer and slot into the top 6 and make a difference like that. I'd love it if he did, but by this point in his career, he is what he is 99 times out of 100. To me, Engvall makes the most sense as a buyout candidate. He is hard to trade because of the 5 years and the $3 million. Even if you retained a third of his salary, maybe you could get someone to take him, but the 5 years still is a big problem because he's just not the type of player that you invest in for the long term. Your bottom 6 forwards are supposed to be making usually closer to the league minimum and be guys who are on 1, 2, maybe 3-year contracts who you can replace if and when they slow down. So I would say there's probably a 60 to 65% chance that Pierre Engvall gets bought out, but we'll see. Again, you need a new general manager first. Then that general manager has to decide who stays, who goes, and how to best go about moving out the players he doesn't want or she doesn't want to keep. So we'll see. We'll see whether or not any of these buyout candidates are actually moved. But it is interesting to see how this is all going to play out. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. 2 Islanders have been named to play in the World Championships. We'll talk about that and their possible impact. Plus, who was the Islanders' most improved player this year? We're going to tell you the leading candidates, and we'll let you vote on it. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. So, how do you now currently stream content, and how much smoother could it be with a faster 4K ready streaming stick? You've got to check this out. So, head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. It's available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. So, Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K, check it out today. So the New York Islanders have a couple of players who are definitely going to play in the World Championships and one who probably will play in the World Championships, but we're sort of waiting for that announcement. Bo Horvat and Noah Dobson will play for Team Canada at the IIHF World Championships. They're going to be in Stockholm, Sweden, and the tournament gets underway in a week, May 9th. It runs through May 25th. Horvat, this is his second time he's representing Canada, but the first time he's doing it as a member of the New York Islanders. He did it last back in 2018, and he had 3 goals and 7 points in 10 games. He also has represented Canada at the World Juniors in 2014 and at the Under-17 Challenge in 2011. So Horvat definitely makes sense to join. And remember, any players who are still in the playoffs, they're not necessarily available. So, Team Canada announced a 15-team roster. They will supplement it. Maybe some of the players who were in the first round will be added. Now, the other player, Noah Dobson, this is the first time he is going to be in the World Championships. He also represented Team Canada at World Juniors in 2019 and the Under-17 Hockey Challenge in 2016. He had 39 points this year. Everydayers, that's a big drop from the 70 points he had the previous season. But these are players who were on that list of 15 initial players that have been named to Canada's roster. And again, as long as these guys don't get injured, I think it's great that they will represent their country and compete in a high-level tournament. It's basically 2 weeks and a couple of days, and it keeps them sharp. They'll still have plenty of time to rest their body and recuperate and then begin training for the new season. So that shouldn't be an issue. And, maybe, just maybe, especially in the case of Noah Dobson, it will allow him the chance to go out there and just get some of the kinks and bad habits out of his game, which unfortunately we did see too many of over the course of the last season. Now, the third player who has not yet been named, and that's because Sweden has yet to announce their roster, but that is Simon Holmstrom. And I think Holmstrom is a very strong candidate for Team Sweden. 20 goals last year, 45 points. That's a 20-point increase in production from a year ago. And the goals only went up from 15 to 20, but the assists went up from 10 to 25. So that is really the big jump. Holmstrom is starting to see the ice better and more and just gaining confidence in his play. So while it's unofficial at this point, I would be disappointed if Simon Holmstrom does not compete for Team Sweden. Again, nothing official as of yet, but hopefully that is something that we will see happen. And I love these tournaments. The quality of hockey is usually very good. It's usually a little less physical, obviously, than an NHL game. You're playing in Sweden. The rinks are bigger. It's more like an Olympic tournament than it is like an NHL game, and I'm fine with that. And again, as long as any of these players stay healthy, I am totally fine. And look, they're going to have, even if a minor injury takes place, you would still have a week in May, June, July, August, and probably half of September before training camp is set to open up. So it should not present a problem unless you're talking about, a torn ACL, God forbid, or some really serious injury. And hopefully that's just not going to happen. But it's an honor. It provides these players with a chance to play at a high level against high level opponents. And, add to the fact that Horvat and Dobson will be teammates on Team Canada. I just think this is a really good situation for the Islanders and for the players involved. And hopefully they will play well, regardless of whether, Canada does well or not. You want those players to play well. And again, maybe getting a little bit different coaching and a different defense partner, and maybe playing on the larger, wider international rink can help Noah Dobson. I think the wider rink in international play probably would be better suited to Dobber because he could skate the puck out of the zone more effectively with that extra room. We'll see. I'm going to keep an eye on him during this tournament and see how it all plays out. We've got more to get to on today's show. We have, we do have a mailbag question. We'll talk a little bit about the most improved player on the Islanders and our Islanders' birthday of the day. And we didn't even mention the clue, but it's a defenseman who played on the Islanders' 1983 Stanley Cup championship team and was very briefly a Ranger after that. Let's see if you can guess who this player is. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here, and if you've never been to a live NHL playoff game, it's unlike anything else. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building, it's all next level. And thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer, and with last-minute deals, you could save up to 60%. Their all-in pricing shows the total cost up front, no surprise fees at checkout, and I love the panoramic seat views. You go on the app, you could see a panoramic view from your seat, so you know exactly what to expect before you purchase the tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So we have a quick mailbag question, and I kind of answered it, but I did not mention the question. And this is from John in Smithtown. First, he said that he believes that Anders Lee is unmovable because of his high contract. And I think that may not really be the case. I think Lee is movable if you can retain some of that $7 million contract. Maybe if you retain $2 million a year or $2.5 million a year, you could probably get someone to take Lee either this offseason or certainly at the trade deadline. And then the buyout question he asked, Mayfield, Duclair, and Engvall. What do I think will happen? Well, I kind of answered that. So, John, thank you so much for the question. Sorry I didn't mention it at the top of the show. But I think Lee is movable. It just, you may have to retain some salary in order to make that happen. Now, I had to get to the most improved Islanders player, and I think there's an easy top candidate for this if you look at the roster. But to me, the two finalists, head and shoulders, are Anders Lee, who had a bounce back season. Worked on his skating, worked on his game in the offseason, and got up to 29 goals this year and 54 points. The 29 goals led the Islanders. The 54 points were second on the Islanders. And then the second major candidate is Simon Holmstrom, who reached the 20-goal plateau for the first time in his career. I mentioned in the last segment that his assists went up by 10 from 15 to 25, and he had a +5 plus minus. So, to me, those are the two biggest candidates. I can't include Mark Gatcomb only because he didn't play with the Islanders before this. So it's tough to say that he improved significantly, but I could put him in there in some way. And maybe Scott Mayfield would be considered a candidate. Again, leading the team in plus minus with a +18. And, again, Mayfield, he does his job. It may not always be a glamorous job or a pretty job, but he does his job. So we're putting the poll up on our YouTube page. Feel free to vote. Feel free to comment and vote for a different player if your choice is not up there. But I have my opinion. I think you got to go with either Holmstrom or Lee. Mayfield is certainly a candidate, but I'd love to hear your feedback. So make sure you answer that poll. And if you aren't on YouTube, you could always email us or DM me on X, and we're happy to count your vote. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And this is a player who maybe is a little overlooked, but like I said, he was on the Islanders' final Stanley Cup winning team. And, basically, Saturday will be the 62nd birthday of former Islanders defenseman Paul Boudelier, the Sydney, Nova Scotia native, 6 feet, 200 pounds, first-round pick of the Islanders in the 1981 draft, played one game for the Isles in 81-82, but in 82-83, he joined the team, played a lot more, and was in 2 playoff games, so he got his name on the Stanley Cup. Stayed with the Isles through the end of the 85-86 season, had 12 goals in 84-85, then played for the Bruins, the North Stars, very briefly, like 4 games for the Rangers, 9 games for the Jets, and then finished his career in the minors and in Switzerland. Boudelier played in 288 games in his NHL career, 27 goals, 110 points, 358 penalty minutes, and 41 playoff games. 36 of those came with the Islanders. He had a goal and 10 points, all of those with the Islanders. One of his better games as an Islander, how about November 10th, 1984? Islanders hosting the Penguins at the Nassau Coliseum. And in this game, you have the goaltenders are Michel Dion for Pittsburgh, Batlin Billy Smith in between the pipes for your New York Islanders. And with the game tied 2-2 in the second period, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Paul Boudelier scores his 5th goal of the year. Pat LaFontaine, the only assist. That made it 3-2 Islanders. The Penguins did tie it late in the period, and then again on the power play in the third, Paul Boudelier and John Tonelli helped set up Tomas Janssen on a power play goal. That put the Islanders ahead. They end up winning it 5-4 on a goal midway through the period by Pat Flatley. But for our Islanders' birthday of the day, Paul Boudelier, he had a goal. He had an assist. So that's a 2-point night. He scored on one of his 2 shots on goal. Paul Boudelier, an often overlooked member of the Islanders' final Stanley Cup team. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders throughout this critical off season. And it's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Everydayers, we're back on Monday. We're going to begin our player-by-player review of last season. And we don't just review, we look ahead to what role these players, if any, will have on the Islanders next season. And of course, if there's any breaking news, we'll bring it to you over the weekend and break it all down for you right here. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.